We'll call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. We'll take a roll call. Make note that we're missing two commissioners, Commissioner Decker and Commissioner Bullinger. First order of business is the order of business. Is there any changes or additions, Mr. Hadley?
No, Mr. Chairman, there are not.
I'd look for a motion to approve the order of business then.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2 on the agenda then would be the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there any changes or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the March 20th meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item 3, our agenda action items for today. We have item 1 is an extension. It's to consider a 5-year extension to the City of Dickinson Renaissance Zone Development Plan as adopted on July 4th, 2004 and amended on July 23rd, 2012 and October 2nd, 2019. And Mr. Josephson is going to present.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask Planning Director Hadley if he has anything to say before I give my presentation.
I don't, Stephen. You're the man.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Josephson. I'm the Renaissance Coordinator for the City of Dickinson. For those of you who are not familiar with it, and for those of you who are, the Renaissance Zone program was created by the state of North Dakota back in 2004. The idea was to encourage redevelopment and investment in central city areas by offering the cities the opportunity to adopt this program. And if a property owner, if a commercial property owner did, this is primarily what we've done here in Dickinson, does major improvements to a commercial property where the cost is 50% or more of the true value of the property, or if a residential property owner within the zone does improvements that equal 20% or more of that value, then the city can offer them property tax relief for a period of up to 5 years. And what Dickinson does is they'll freeze the assessed value of that property of what it was before those improvements were completed. And what the state will also do for commercial properties is that they can get some property tax relief for that. This program has been around it's been in Dickinson for 15 years. The state century code says that the initial program is 15 years. It expires at the end of 15 years, but cities have the opportunity to renew this economic development program for 5 additional years. The city's memorandum of understanding with the state runs out at the end of June of this year, and city staff has identified opportunities not just in the downtown area, but also along the Villard commercial corridor on Villard Street, both east and west, as potential redevelopment areas. And looking at some new economic development opportunities, wants to continue this program out for 5 more years. And the process is we are working with state staff on this. The process is to go to public hearing with planning and zoning to get a recommendation of approval, and then approval by city commission. During this process, city staff looked at the Renaissance Zone as it currently is and decided to make some changes, identified some other blocks where there were economic development opportunities. Some of them are immediately adjacent to the downtown area, and others extend out further west along West Villard. Part of the process, according to the Century Code, is that any property owners on the blocks that are proposed for reallocation or removal be notified by mail, which city staff did. So staff recommends extension of the Renaissance Zone program with the changes in the Renaissance Zone itself for 5 more years. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Josephson, what's the process for applying for this, or how long does it take?
It can take from the time that somebody meets with staff, they get an application in, and staff works with them to get the application, to fill out the application and get it in. And it runs on the same schedule as the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. So it goes to Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing, and then goes to City Commission for one hearing.
And they can't apply after the fact?
No, they can't apply after the fact. They can't. The idea is that they commit to a certain amount that they're going to spend on construction, and also there are only certain things that, most construction is permissible. It's really aimed at doing things such as updating electrical, updating plumbing, updating the guts of the building, bringing it up to code. Not cosmetic things, although if you were to do facade changes on the outside as part of it, that is acceptable. So the applicants need to come forward and actually tell the city and the state what it is that they're going to do. And after construction begins after approval from the city and from the state. So it takes about maybe about a 2-month period from the time they turn in their application, 2.5 months, and it is noticed also. It is subject to public notice.
Mr. Josephson, do we encourage them to do the facade changes when they're doing that?
Yes, we do. We do. If they want to do that, they can do it as part of it, but also we tell them about Stark Development Corporation's program too. And the reason I mention that is we have people come in. Sometimes they can do them hand in hand, and other times people come to see us about a Renaissance Zone project, and it turns out that it's primarily facade programs and much less expensive than what would be required to meet the Renaissance Zone threshold.
Well, street appeal is always the same.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add into the process, just so everybody knows, no matter what application that you apply for through the City Planning Commission, the deadline is the first Friday of the month, and that's for the next month's meeting. And it gives us time to actually do the review and do our notification and all of that. So the Renaissance Zone projects are exactly like everything else that we hear. The zone change could be a PUD with 350 lots, could be, whatever. That time frame, if it's a complete application, and that's the key, if it's a complete application on that Friday or soon thereafter, we have a little bit of wiggle room there that we can work with people on. We can get them on the agenda, just so everyone's clear.
So where does the state's approval come in? Is it after we approve it?
After we approve.
Yes.
So after commission approves it, city commission approves it, then the state has to approve it?
Yeah, the state gives conditional approval. However, what we'll do is it's not a surprise. I'll get in touch with the state Renaissance coordinator after we get an application, or even before that, to let them know about what's coming. So it's not as if it just shows up.
Okay.
So we work very closely on all these projects. We work very closely with Ricky Rorich, who's the state Renaissance Zone coordinator in Bismarck.
Any other commissioners have questions? Concerns? Mr. Hadley, is this a public hearing?
It is, sir.
With that, then I guess if there's no other questions, we'll open it up to the public. This is a public hearing regarding the Renaissance Zone. Anybody in the public that has comments or questions can step up to the podium and state their concerns or questions at this time. Anybody in the public have any questions or concerns regarding the Renaissance Zone? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And are you looking for a motion to approve this
Yep.
today? Okay. Commissioners,
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the proposed 5-year extension of the City of Dickinson Renaissance Development Plan as being compliant with the City of Dickinson comprehensive plan in the City of Dickinson Renaissance Zone Development Plan as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
We have
Second that.
a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of extension of the Renaissance Zone signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Move on to item 2 in our action items. There's a rezoning request to consider a rezone petition from R1 to R2 for the property described in the Country Oaks Estate Second Edition as Lot 7 through 11, Block 6, in the south half of Lot 1, Block 6. It was previously zoned on February of 2012. I think this is a cleanup issue, if I'm
It is, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a cleanup issue. This item was not taken to the City Commission in 2012 for approval, and it was brought to our attention, so the city noticed it, and we're in the process of resolving. I believe the owner of the property is here, if there's any questions of him. Obviously, staff would still recommend approval of this. You can see, I think you have a larger map I passed down as well, and the area that it is. It's going to R2 zoning, which fits in, and it's a much better transition from the R1 around Prairie Rose to the high-density residential to the south and east.
I think the stuff to the north is already twin homes or R2.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I believe that's the plan. I mean, if the owner wants to expound on that, but I believe the owner developed most of that, if not all of it, and I think the plan was to go ahead and develop it further, and it just came to our attention that that particular zone change, the north part of it went through, the south part of it did not, for whatever reason. We don't really know. So anyway, it is a cleanup item. Staff would recommend approval of it once again in 2019, and I guess if you have any questions, I can either answer them, or if the applicant has anything he wants to add.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or Mr. Hadley regarding this rezoning request? Hearing none, is this a public hearing?
It is, sir.
With that said, we will open the public hearing. Anyone in the public that has any comments or questions regarding the rezoning request, please step to the podium, state your name, and ask your questions. Anyone in the public have any questions regarding this rezoning request? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and commissioners, I'll look for a motion.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of REZ-001-19, zone change from R1 single family to R2 medium density residential as depicted in attachment A, and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion regarding this item? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. So it looks like to be at the end of our action items. We will move into our item 4, which is our work session items. Chapter 34, subdivision ordinance update. Mr. Josephson going to handle that, or Mr.?
Yes, well, we'll both handle it. I think you'll find the bulk of the questions may go towards Mr. Hadley. Steve Josephson, what you have before you, commissioners, is our proposed changes to Chapter 34. It's the subdivision of land as found in the city's municipal code. And for those of you who've been on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a few years, this effort started up, I think it was about a year and a half ago, when there were talks about making changes and updating the subdivision portion of it. And what I was asked to do was, we had several lists of comments, came from different people. Some of them were comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission, some from staff. I believe there were actually some from the from the private sector. And what I did was I got those and pulled them together and incorporated them into a text, plus had planning staff and staff from, from engineering met for several weeks, once a week, to go over proposed changes, and that's what you have in front of you right now. I would say that probably the major thing in this is there were several procedures in here about the subdivision process that have been removed because they're now in pre-development manual that the city has. The good thing about that is if you change your procedures, if it's in the code and you change your procedures, then you have to come back and change the code in order to match that. Now in the text that you have in front of you, it would say these procedures are outlined in the city's pre-development manual. So it gives some flexibility there. There were a number of definitions that were added in. There were some things added in the code and things that were in there before where there weren't clear definitions as to what they were. So there were some definitions that were added into it. There were some updated design standards that we got from. Some of it had to do with road widths, and we made it consistent with the city's transportation master plan. And then Parks and Recreation reviewed the parks portion of it and gave some comments back to us too. Also, the increase in the developer's deposit for required infrastructure improvements from 130% of estimated costs of improvements to 160%. There was also updated section regarding acceptance of public improvements. There were changed specifications for plats section to reference requirements in a development application checklist. And there was a revised the variance section to read that hardship variances would be heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Currently, it says the Board of Adjustment, and the thinking there was because this comes through Planning and Zoning anyway, that this was the more appropriate board because they would be up on the subdivision procedures and whatever applications were in front of them. The way that the text is written in front of you is the portions that are proposed for removal are struck through, and the new text is underlined. So this is a workshop. One of the other things that was done was Mr. Hadley shared this with a professional surveyor who was also going to get it out to surveyors in the area to get some comments back. So just wanted to go over what these changes are. I don't know if you've had time to go through it or if you need a little more time, but this is just a summary of the changes that are in. I think the big thing is it's going to be streamlined. So if there are changes in procedures, the city doesn't have to go back and amend the code, for that. It's in a document that's not adopted but is in effect for the city.
And Mr. Chairman, just to add on to that, Stephen, thanks, and then you can run through that, but it falls in line with our process that we changed, that I just explained with our deadlines and whatnot, and the final applications that we changed back in 2015. And this was the one piece of what we had regularly administer that hasn't been updated to that from that time frame. And it, we have sent it out to the local surveyors. We have in the past already sent it out to them and received a few comments. We're hoping to get a few more. A lot of them are minor changes. Stephen can kind of outline and go through those, but it falls within obviously our new process. And then obviously, the chairman and I had a discussion last night on the bonding amount, and I think we really do. I'd like to hear the thoughts of the board on that, because that probably is one of the bigger items that is important not only to the city residents, because we get what we're promised, but also that we're not overburdening the development community.
Well, I have a lot of questions on the bonding amount. So, speaking to you last night, you said it's just on the public infrastructure stuff. But then I look in 34.060, And the 160% applies to stormwater management, storm sewer, street, sanitary sewer, water, survey, staking, inspection, fences, lighting, sidewalk, public space, street signage, mailboxes, and private spaces. I mean, that's everything. What else is there left?
Well, those would be taken as the public infrastructure.
And I spoke with Mr. Kubas regarding this a little bit last night. I wish he was here today, but the understanding I got from him is that once the work was complete, the contractor was paid, we would release this bond. So I think that raising this, we have some people that have this conception that we're doing that to protect us during the warranty period, but it really isn't. I mean, that'll be gone upon completion of the project and the proof of payment to the contractors. So then why do we need 160%?
I believe the reason that engineering wanted to raise it because we would do the inspections, and that wasn't something that was programmed in before, is how I understood that. So we'd actually hire, as we talked last night, we'd actually hire a engineering firm A to go out and do inspections for the city on behalf of the city as a developer puts in roadways, whatnot. We all know, I mean, we can use some examples in the community where we didn't do that. And it would just be the ability for us to recoup and make sure that that's done according to our code requirements. So the amounts, I mean,
But wouldn't that be considered a fee we would charge them for the inspection?
well, we can call it whatever we want to call it. You could have an engineering fee that would require that would be outside the bond.
I mean, this is just a surety that says the project is going to get complete. This doesn't say anything about protecting our inspections. So
I agree with that, because a surety is surety to make sure everything got done.
I mean,
I'd like Administrator Gaw and Attorney Murtha to jump in maybe too. I think we can easily have a fee that would be an engineering review fee that then you could back that out of the surety bond for any public infrastructure that we feel is significant.
I struggle telling a developer that if we're going to do a $10 million development, you have to put a $6 million surety bond or cash up to hold until construction's complete.
I haven't been involved in any of the discussions regarding the policy reasons for the changes to Chapter 34. I would just note that, it is a policy decision on how to set the bond, and so it is for this body to, discuss those positions and make. And if the department, if it's the engineering department proposing the increase in the bond, then I would just suggest that between now and the next time it's brought forward, that maybe there is a further detailed explanation with regards to why they feel this request is necessary.
And then speaking with Mr. Kubas last night, he said that we require a 1-year warranty period, but in here now it's 2 construction seasons, so is that a 24-month warranty period? I mean, there's just some stuff that doesn't seem like everybody's on the same page.
Well, and that's the purpose of this meeting. What I think we're hearing, and Steve and I were just talking about it, this is perhaps sometimes what engineering has noticed, some issues, and then planning seen some issues, so perhaps what will happen between the next meeting, like Attorney Murtha alluded to, is we can go back and say, okay, this wasn't well received, what's your reasoning and what's some alternatives, and bring back some scenarios of why we want to do it. I do think we need to look at our warranty periods. I think that's an issue. I don't know that having things and releasing them immediately does us much good. So I think some of your comments were valid in that.
Well, I mean, state law requires them to give us a 1-year warranty.
Mm-hmm.
So do we require more than state law? I don't have an issue with it, but then I don't understand the surety, because if the surety is to protect us during the warranty period, that doesn't say that in here. It says that once the project is complete and the contractors are basically paid, the surety is released. So that doesn't protect us during the warranty period.
Yeah, so we'd have to have some sort of surety for that warranty period.
I mean, are we getting that surety then from the contractor, the developer, our engineers, their engineers? that,
I think the project, just to answer part of that, I think the project for public infrastructure is not complete until after the warranty period and it's accepted fully by the city engineering department. So that is when it's complete.
that's not what I was told last night. Is upon payment of the completion of the project and payment of the contractors, that would be released. Then I really have an issue. Now we're going to tell people we're going to make them hold a $6 million bond for 2 years?
I would offer that I have seen in some of the development agreements that the city has had, that the bond is not, or the surety is not released until after a certain amount of warranty period. It's not in all of them, but I have seen that language there.
Okay, well,
And I mean, from staff's point of view, I mean, what we're trying to do is come up with something that doesn't allow some of the problems we've had in the past to come back. And yes, maybe we need to rework that. That's great, but we do want to hear suggestions from the board on what you would rather see.
I just struggles. To me, we're putting all the burden on the developer when maybe we're not doing our job in making sure that the project is being done to our specs as we go along and doing proper inspections and follow-up.
And so we need to make sure, I mean, all of us, I think, agree that we probably haven't done, whether it be from the city standpoint or the development community standpoint, a good job in following up and making sure some of those things were resolved with some of the developments that we dealt with. So that's why we're here, and I would agree that however we're going to do that, we need to make sure that it's very clearly outlined that the city, if that's what we want, will hire engineering firm A to go do inspections for the new roadway project that we're doing, and make sure that we're holding them accountable to do those inspections. And if there's some failure, it actually wouldn't be then with the developer. I guess it would be indirectly, but it would actually be with the engineering firm that provided that service to us, that said it was, that met our spec. So it gives us a layer of coverage that right now we haven't seemingly had. So I think that's where we want to go. And I think that, you know, we can work that out. I mean, the amounts that engineering was looking at was to basically try to cover our costs. And you have to realize, you know, what they're looking at is we've been burned and we have big dollar bill signs of things that we need to go fix that people did, that whether it was our fault or their fault or whoever's fault, it really doesn't make any difference. We need to now pay for that to resolve that.
I sent this to one of the biggest developers in Bismarck to review, and he said he would not even consider doing a development in Dickinson with these rules.
I don't see it either. But the bonding shouldn't carry over to something in the future.
He said,
after development's done.
I'm tying up 60% of the project for 2 extra years.
Yeah. People aren't going to be wanting to do that at all.
I mean, we don't want to handcuff the ability to grow just because there was mistakes made during the oil boom. And I believe that, I'm not saying that some of the developers aren't to blame, but I'm saying that right here is, we have some blame to accept too. We're not doing our job correctly. I mean, we can write anything we want into here. If we still don't do our job, it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I would like to have some more discussion on this, way more discussion before we go any farther. So.
Yeah, we'll take it back to staff and we'll get everybody involved and do a little more review, because I know you make some good points. I think staff makes some good points. We just have to find that common road. Because you're right, if we write this in such a way that no developer will develop here, that's a real issue. That's not the intent.
What about our city engineer? I would like to have him here, so he could.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it would be nice if Craig was here. I'm sure he's got some comments too, but.
Yeah, and that's what we'll do. We'll review that for next time, because a lot of this was his thinking, so we'll make sure he's at the next meeting, and we'll make some potential revisions and look at it a little bit more.
And we do currently, just so it's clear, we do require 130% now for our ordinance now.
And-
So just so we're aware of what we actually have on the table now.
I just don't,
But then you're adding 2 years instead of 1.
Yes, that's correct.
okay. Is there any other comments regarding this? I think there's definitely some work to be done on this yet, so.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I ask, is there any other concerns
I mean,
in any others? Some
I
of the
mean, there was
stuff
just a
is-
lot of cleanup. There were some places we struck out community development director, and then there's some places it was still in there when I read this. I mean, there's a lot, just some housekeeping stuff that I saw when I read through it, but I mean, I just think the titles for, like, your title is changed now to city planner, I think. And, I mean, and
Well,
the subdivision administrator is the city administrator, is that correct?
Well, what we've tried to do in a lot of the things that we've been rewriting is give the authority to the city administrator, who is the one that has the authority to do that. He designates, so whether he designates me, or Stephen, or Brandy, or Jan as the subdivision administrator, that is who, that's why we do that. Just so, for the same reason Stephen brought up, that we were trying to make the ordinance as flexible as we possibly can, because you may have 10 years from now a city engineer that administers this. So I think that, go ahead, Jen.
I would just also offer that as far as housekeeping items and cleanup, this was intended to be a draft, and so at the point that this body is comfortable with, it sounds like you want another work session to discuss it, and after that, when it's brought back before you as a public hearing, that's the time when it would be put into an actual ordinance format. I would be reviewing it to clean it up to make sure that it's consistent and in the appropriate format. So a lot of those issues will be done later on. It just doesn't make much sense to do it at this point because you're still deciding where you're going. But I think to Mr. Hadley's point, are there other, besides the bonding, are there other big substantive areas that you want to have feedback on to make sure, just so staff has that direction and make sure that we are fully discussing that before the next meeting?
I mean, I would like to review our process too, from application, to make sure.
I have a question also. Okay, so our city engineer, I see that a lot, would make some decisions, but then you're talking about hiring another engineering company to make sure before we release the bond?
But we would have, the issue is we don't have the proper equipment to do the testing ourselves, so.
That's what I wanted.
And inspections, I mean, he can do some of the inspections, but like the actual soil testing or stuff, or compaction testing, we wouldn't have anybody that could do that, so.
You'd also need a larger engineering department.
Correct,
To
yeah.
just do some oversight. So at this point in time, it probably makes more sense to hire an engineering firm to do that. for us.
That part's not uncommon to have somebody review their engineers.
Well, it's just actually better for us.
Yeah.
Because we have,
Right, you have a different set of eyes, different.
I mean, there was some, I mean, when I talked to Craig a little bit last night, there was also some discussion that we would make the developer hire our engineer to do the project. I don't know if I'm not sure I'm a fan of that, because then now we're locking into telling the developer who he has to use as an engineer. I don't know where I didn't see that in here, but that was brought up last night also, so.
But there are some communities that do that. I don't know that I'm a fan of that myself, but
We had
it's an option.
Mr. Bill Watson that tried to push that through back in the day here with an engineering firm, and it didn't go over very well.
I would not agree on that either. That's just setting us up for a lawsuit down the line or putting the blame on us rather than on the developer.
I mean, I'm open to some kind of retainage for 2 years to cover the warranty period, but 60% seems like a lot.
Well, we will we will come up with something that addresses that. When, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask and maybe clarify the process and the applications, can you?
I'd like to see the whole process from start to beginning. If somebody comes in and wants to do a subdivision, I'd like to see the application and what our processes are.
Okay.
So,
So what we'll do is we will include what we have currently at our next work session, so you see that. What you'll see is a engineering checklist, depending on what kind of project it is. There's certain things that are applied to projects that are small or large from the engineering department. And then there's a development checklist that's a planning one. So, I mean, two different things. Sometimes you don't use the engineering one. I always use the planning one. And so the planning one has contacts for anybody that you might have to contact in our ETZ or in the city for any kind of application. So it's a 2-page document. It doesn't mean that people have to do that. Typically, there's probably most of the applications that come through have 5 or 6 check marks of people that need to respond, and those responses come in with their complete application. So I just so it gives you an idea of what, when you see it.
so if I come in and make an application to subdivide 25 acres, who do I have to contact?
You come in and visit with me,
Okay?
you and I sit down, and we go through that checklist, and I mark down and go through with you who it is and what you need and why.
Who might those people be?
City engineering, public works, 911 folks for addressing, pretty basic, you know, if it's a new subdivision in residential, then you go to Park and Rec for their impact fee review. Depending on if you're in the ETZ, you might go to the rural water folks, you might go, I mean, it depends. There's so many options that it depends where you are. I mean, that checklist actually was one of the better things that we've done, just because it organized who the players are and who you need to go see. And it's like a contact list of anybody you'd ever have to contact for development in Dickinson.
I mean, I understand. I can see that the developer having to go out and contact the outside entities that aren't the city, but when I make an application to the city, I shouldn't have to call fire, I shouldn't have to call police. It should be an application, but it gets spread out through the city. They bring their comments back to you, you give them back to the developer, so they're not,
And we've done, and just, Chairman, just so I can clarify, I mean, since Mr. Gau's been here, we've included more discussions in our site plan meetings, and those site plan meetings have been dealing with some of the, like Dickinson Hills issues and that. We can transition to that, but there's no way that my process will ever be able to be totally geared by me, because it won't be a city department that I'm always going to. Sometimes there'll be a state agency or whatever that really we don't want to be the person asking for that approval for development.
and I'm not saying the outside entities, they should have to contact them. Rural water is something that's not under our hat.
Right.
But when they make an application to the city, all the city departments, they shouldn't have to run to every city department. It should be one stop. We drop off the application, it gets submitted to our city departments, they send back comments to one person is the lead back to that developer. So they're not talking to 15 people.
No, and I totally agree, and the reason that we have this process in place is that's exactly what we had in place when I came here, and it did not work. So with Mr. Gau's help, we're going to facilitate the other departments to be very active, because what we don't want, and that's what happened back in 2015, those departments would show up to this meeting and all of a sudden say, oh, well, I have this issue at this meeting, and that is too late. This meeting is for the public. It's for you to review what the proposal is, give your comments, staff's recommendations. It's not for the other city departments to come and vent any concerns they might have had. So that is why the process that we have in place right now was put into place, because it was broken. And it's not saying that we can't do that, because we can. We can definitely do that, but that's why we have what we have, because it was not working. And that's why you had meetings that were 8 hours long.
I mean, we're the city of Dickinson. We're one entity. We're not 15 entities.
And we have started instituting, we have 30-day responses, so I mean 30-day responses on all agencies. So if a state agency, I mean, it is a little awkward, if a state agency doesn't respond within 30 days, then what we're basically telling applicants is that they will get to this board and be able to be heard. Now, then it'll be your discretion to decide whether or not you want to give a recommendation without the state fire marshal's review.
I mean, and we have control over them, I understand
Right.
that.
No, we don't, but we're opening that up and saying that this is helping facilitate moving it forward, because sometimes when we first started this process, yes, getting comments were not as easy as they could have been, but it was changed once again. So, Mr. Gall, I think I cut you off 2 or 3 times. There you
No,
go.
I think you're covering everything. You're absolutely right. That's one of the things when I got here, I heard that we weren't always easy to deal with in development. And the first time I saw Walter's checklist that he so dearly loves, and we jokingly about it, it's very organized, it is, but it puts an awful lot of work on it. And actually, too, what it does is it really takes in much of any interaction with city staff or even outside entities until we look at it. So it was almost that they complete the checklist before they ever talk to us. So now what we're doing, what we're moving towards is, one, as soon as we get it, we get our team together, we meet every week typically and go through things. And then a lot of times what held us up is waiting on those outside entities. Well, I think part of our process once we get it is to make sure that, one, did the outside entities get it? You know, maybe they didn't get it. Maybe it says they did, but maybe they didn't. Let's make sure they have it. Anything they're having might get worked into our staff discussions, and so works through that. So it does a lot of behind the scenes, because you do have to have it a month early for the next month. So we've got about 3 weeks in there to pass it back and forth, and that should mean that when you see it in a month, it's a pretty polished product and ready to go. But we'll see how that goes. We've worked with IT. We have a computer system that anything planning or building, even commercial building permits, go in there, and we all get a notification that, hey, this is in there. So this is going to be kind of a trial year. We're modeling some things, and if you hear comments from builders and developers that seem to not like the new process, or they do, you know, let us know as we discuss this, because it is a work in progress.
Commissioners, anything else?
Commissioners, what I would encourage is take some time, go through these go through the proposed changes, and if you have any comments, convey them, you know, to Mr. Hadley or to Mr. Kubis or to myself. And as I said, as was said before, we'll meet before we come back for another work session on this. But the idea is to smooth as much of this out before even going to public hearing. I mean, these are major changes to a whole chapter in the municipal code, and that's part of the reason why the workshops are being held, is to work all these things out before it actually goes to public hearing.
Agreed.
And Stephen has done a great job at trying to pull together what we had, which was very disjointed, and it still has some issues that we need to clean up, but he's done a very good job of trying to pull it together to where it flows and actually makes a little more sense. So yeah, this has been a tough exercise, not only because of getting our staff here and involved in it, but outside, and it is a rather important part of our city code. It lines out the new parts of our cities.
Do you remember when the last revision was? Because I think when I got on planning, we revised it.
We've done little tweaks to it throughout the years, but I mean a major revision, I'm not sure, Stephen.
There was a major revision, I believe it was back in 2012 when Ed Corton was here, and then there have been some tweaks along the way. So this really represents a major revision.
All right, anything else on that?
I had one thing for Mr. Josephson. The items that are struck from here, which document did those move into, or where did you feel they were covered? There was another process or document. A lot of the items that you're taking out of here.
They just came from the original Chapter 34. And then in some cases, though, you'll notice, because of the flow, some of them might be struck through, but they're still in there, you know,
Okay.
elsewhere.
Okay, I thought there was a preliminary document or something where those
You-
showed up.
Well, Commissioner, part of the issue was this. We were doing our changes with track change,
Okay.
and I found out as I was preparing this document for planning and zoning for the workshop, is every time you make changes to a track change document, you lose all the stuff that was there before. So that was when I took the word copy of it and went through and made the, made the strike throughs and underlines, because to present a document, we met every week, okay? We met every week, and after every meeting, there were proposed changes. So every time I'd have a different version, you'd lose something on track changes. So the best way to bring this, to you and anybody else who was interested was to take the Word version of it and do strike throughs and underlines and that.
Okay.
But I've kept all those versions, so.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Only thing I have, Mr. Chairman, at the end is, we were going to try to have the lot inventory this month for
Oh.
you, but we've got some, our GIS analyst has some family issues, and so we'll hope to have that, an updated version of it. We said we're going to bring it every spring, so a vacant lot for the new folks, we do a vacant lot, started last year, vacant lot inventory that says how many lots are out there in the city of Dickinson to build, so.
Okay.
Hope to have that for you at our next meeting.
All right, so then we'll go to item 6, public issues of city concern not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the public that has an issue that would like to address the board and step forward now? Anybody with an issue, or questions or comments? Seeing none, close that part and go to item 7, adjournment. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Okay, we will open the Urban Forestry Committee meeting agenda. We call that to order. Roll call again. We have 2 commissioners absent, Mr. Decker and Mr. Bullinger. Is there any changes to the order of business, Mr. Hadley?
No, sir.
I'd look for a motion to approve the order of business.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Bush. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any changes or alterations to those minutes? If there's no changes, I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 3, the action agenda items. Looks like we have nothing on for today's action items. We'll move right on to item 4, our work session items. Item 1 is the summer work plan. Mr. Hadley, I'm assuming you're taking the lead on this?
Well, I thought our city forester was going to be here, but that's fine. We'll visit on a little bit. Just kind of backing up, the reason the Planning Commission functions as the Urban Forestry Board, for those of you that don't know, back in 2014, 15, whenever the city forester left, we didn't have one. And so I kind of assumed those responsibilities, and the board graciously nodded their heads and said, yes, we'll be the board, while we just make things happen. And that's what it's allowed me to do, is continue to do some urban forestry things, do the Tree City USA stuff, do that. We now have an urban forester, once again, on staff. And so he and I are working together on plans for not only the plans that I've had for the downtown area, but also just throughout the town. He's going to take that and run with it. He's going to take it and run with it and do the Tree City, do the other items. So what we've done, if you look at the last paragraph in the minutes from our last meeting, you know, we do have to have a discussion on any members on this board, because I think his intent, and Mr. Gaw is going to jump in as well. There's Vern. Good morning, Vern. His intent is to have an urban forestry board itself, and once again, you know, the reason that you folks were somewhat volunteered to do that was to just keep the program in place. We have kind of a proud tradition of urban forestry in the past of the city of Dickinson. We have, this is our 26th year of Tree City USA. Not too many communities have that. Vern can expound on that, but you know, what we're hoping to do is collaborate. I mean, obviously the planning department has been very involved in the urban forestry part, and will support and help Vern in however we possibly can. But we also know that there's a need, and there is a need to have a very active group of urban forestry board people. It's a different kind of board. I've run a number of them in the past. It's usually a hands-on, go do things. Yes, you meet and you discuss and you, and I don't know that I was really volunteering you to do that when you all shook your head saying that. You would have been less likely to shake your head yes at that time. So I think Vern's point is that he'd like to try to have some of those folks that maybe have a little more background in urban forestry, trees, whatnot, involved in that board, along with a few of you. If you would like to be involved, that surely will be something that we would like to transition to, but right now we don't have one. And so our official process is you are our official urban forestry board, and whether or not we want to keep you the way it is and add some other people, or change it to a different board, that's kind of where we are. And I just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody realized that, and you know, once again, thank you to the ones that have been through this. Because you probably shook your head and didn't really understand why you signed up for that, but you did. I do appreciate it because it's allowed us to continue the urban forestry program. So maybe before Vern comes up, Mr. Gaw, do you want to add something to that?
Oh, you can keep it from now on. All right. Yeah, Walter makes a good point that urban forestry has been somewhat cyclical in this city, that it's kind of up and down. We have an urban forester now, and hopefully that continues into the future. I think we will continue this discussion as staff. I think as far as planning goes, having the planning commission involved in urban forestry, I think works from an administrative standpoint. As Walter alluded to, it might be good to have a few more worker bee type of folks that are passionate about it, hands-on, to help Vern in the field, so to speak, and make some grassroots decisions there. So I think there's perhaps two things to look at. One of the things that we're doing is, as far as the city, again, with my being new, is where do folks sit on the organizational chart? And I think maybe urban forestry does fit a little bit more under planning, so that might be something in the future we look at and think about. So this is something that we just wanted to ask. I think what I want to ask you is there anybody here that really doesn't like having to deal with the urban forestry issues at planning, or has it worked?
I guess I don't have any issue with it.
I don't have any issue. I just feel that we're here more as a commission to approve spending money more so than doing the actual work. I think Mr. Plum should get some more volunteers to help.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm available to plant trees or if I even could.
I mean, I think the challenge in the past, but we took this over, is that we didn't have anybody ever show up. Is that?
We would have the honorable judge would show up, and you know, my first urban forestry meeting for the city of Dickinson was the forester, the public works director, and myself. And that was actually, I went to an Arbor Day, which was, I, once again, used to run a number of urban forestry programs, and one was a very large one. It was a large enough one that the high school would let the students out And it was a high school about the size of Dickinson High. They'd let them out all afternoon to plant trees, and we'd plant 20,000 trees, okay? So you have to back up and say, okay, that's what we could be doing, and not that we necessarily need to, but that's what we could be doing. And this was an area that was full of trees. So I think that where we're going with this is basically, yes, we need some more hands-on, we need some more people that are in that field. Once again, it just allowed us to continue a program and allowed us to move forward, by having you involved. And I think that, once again, a lot of times I feel bad in a way that, a lot of the information, we'd have an agenda and we'd go through, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And I would just give it to you and you'd look at it, and there wasn't, there wasn't not necessarily a lot of direction from the board, which is completely different than what we do on the planning commission.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just go do things. It should be a board that's engaged with people in the community, just like your board for the planning commission, that have a vested interest in urban forestry. So, if that includes a few of you or people added to this board to do that, then that's great. Then I think that would help Vern. We were pretty successful. I put out a solicitation with your utility bills for donations and get $3,000 from people in Dickinson, along when they're paying the utility bill, to donate to plant trees in Dickinson. So there is a group of people that are interested in it. We just need. I didn't have the time to fully devote to gaffling all those people together. Vern has started that, so once again, thank you for doing that. But we kind of need to transition onto something that works better.
I think if we can put a board together that's going to be active, I would rather see that than continue here. But that's my opinion on it, I guess. But
I guess if I may inject, I know I'm asking.
Go ahead first.
The thing is in my past experiences as far as working with tree board, they really need to be separated from another committee. And the thing is I think the planning commission was a good one for it in the meantime. But the thing is now that I'm going to be more active, I need to have a board that really has similar ideas so that we can form alliances outside of the just a meeting every month. And the groups that, the thing is I've got the minutes of we had an informal meeting. Anyway, as you can see, I've approached several people and they're very interested in being part of it. Very key in the city. Parks and Rec. I have Craig Pearson on there. The Soil Conservation District, which is a source of us as far as acquiring younger size trees. We've got a nursery lady in there, Monica Armstrong. We've got the college, very interested. They're very interested in pursuing. We're Tree City USA, as Walter had mentioned, for 26 years. They are interested in getting a status of Tree Campus USA, which there's only two in the in North Dakota right now, NDSU, and there's an Indian college that has it. But the thing is we would be the third one, and they're very interested in it as well. We discussed various topics as far as where our leading is. I've got indications of approval from various areas such as Parks and Rec, as far as interest in gaining some of these trees from the soil conservation. They usually have a bunch left over at the end of the season that they end up just throwing away. The thing is they said we could have those, we can put them in nurseries, and place them around different areas of parkland
property as well as, you know, the university property and and the city property areas where we can actually start smaller nurseries and then transplant them out to as larger size trees down the road. We do have a tree spade, and so very active in trying to get that more organized as well. Other people that I'd like to get involved with is the utilities, because they do a lot of tree trimming, and some other areas as well in the city. I'd like to get people at large. We invited one person off the board here, but I would say they didn't show up, but the thing is if anybody's on the board interested in serving on it, it would be great, you know, because we want to get that, the homeowner and landowner type of aspect as well. Like to get a developer on it. And so the thing is to get them started off right away as far as, you know, what they should have out there. I guess one of the first examples, I guess when I first came into town and I go to the northwest side of the town, and I mean, my gosh, you know, I mean, exposure just to wind and snow collection and costs of removal and things like that really become apparent. And the thing is, so new developments, if we can put something in even in some of the preliminary requirements, would be something that would be of value as well, that would you folks would be involved with. So, but I would really appreciate this type of group, basically, that we could, you know, meet at Public Works, where this is where we're primarily, you know, I guess we get our hands dirty, you know. Doing Arbor Day is important. I think that they need to be visible out there. Again, the connections the possibilities are innumerable by, you know, getting these different entities involved. So, I don't know, did everybody get a copy?
I didn't, but that's okay.
Okay. I'd also like to pass out part of an educational program that we're involved with. I was involved with Extension's Spring Fever programs the last 4 weeks, and the thing is it's amazing. There, like Walter was mentioning, there's a lot of people that are interested in horticulture and trees and all sorts of aspects of gardening. And this is one that I've searched over the events, the city's events, and this seems to be 1 week that wasn't blocked out. It's just before Rough Rider Days. And so the thing is I've felt, you know, we have this resource, tremendous resource over at Experiment Station and around the Parks building that has a number of trees out there. It's ideal for identification. This is good for new homeowners. I guess I'm directing it at that, looking at different aspects of tree planting. I'd like to get a tree planter from the Soil Conservation out there where they do the smaller trees and planting, as well as doing the regular hand plant type planting, but also we use our spade out there and just give people a first-hand idea of what is out there and availability as far as tree planting. Then the next night is going to be deciduous trees, I think, identification, and the other one's evergreens. And just so people get an idea, you know, of, you know, what's this tree in my backyard? And then once you know that, you can identify problems. Or what kind of trees do I want to plant in my yard? And this way you can get the good and the bad of both. So the thing is if there's problems with this one or, you know, elsewhere. I'm also inviting people that at that time bring their tree problems in, you know, samples, and get them identified. It's so difficult nowadays, you know, you can see a slideshow from Extension Service, but the thing is unless you have a hands-on visual, you can never, the expert can never be too careful or too sure. But the thing is then he's more sure, and the homeowner gets an exact identification of the problem and control of it, so that. Also, then I'd just like to make one more comment, is that we've got together, and there's going to be a Public Works Week, the end of May, and the thing is May 22nd is a Wednesday. We're looking at between 1 and 1:30, or 1 and 3 o'clock, I should say, as far as for celebrating an Arbor Day. I just got notification from the National Arbor Day Association, or Foundation, and they've recognized us again as, so our 26th year as a Tree City USA. They also have an advanced program called the Tree Growth Program, and that's special recognition for different programs they're having. And the thing is where I was in Jamestown, we had that finally recognized every year as well. And the thing is, I want to get Dickinson up to, at that same level. And the thing is I mean, it just puts you up at a more of elite level in the state as far as forestry programs. Not so much as bragging, but yeah, it's bragging. But the thing is it just keeps the program going and gets us that one more step further, that next tree that's planted, beyond.
And Vern, if you don't mind, I think the Growth Award too is based on having much more public involvement, events and public involvement type things that you would also do. So that when you do get a Growth Award, I guess my point is, it shows that you have that active board, you have that active group.
Right.
You have, and we started a little bit of that. I mean, I worked with the Girl Scouts and a few other groups in the last few years to do it. But when you start getting that going, then that really is, just so the board knows, I mean, that's kind of a public participation portion of the Tree City. You can do a Tree City, obviously you can do a Tree City with just me. And there's a little more that we want to shoot for than
Sure.
that. And so I just wanted to add that to you. And Vern, if you wouldn't mind, I think this would be a good opportunity. Maybe I just skimmed over item 1 and 2 for not only this board, but maybe the TV folks. Would you want to outline your summer program, kind of how many trees you're going to plant, and you're still doing the removals, right? And
Yes.
and you just mentioned Arbor Day, so thank you.
We're going to be planting, I've got on order about 27 trees and shrubs that are going in on public land. Some of the areas also are going in, I have a goal of replacing every tree that we have to remove off of the boulevard for Dutch elm disease. We replace that with another tree, whether it's in that same location or nearby. So we're planting, I'm not sure exactly broken down how many we have, but the thing is that we're planting for that. We're also got goals I'm putting in a grant for a North Dakota Forest Service grant for $10,000 to put in 3 entrance beautification type plantings. We're looking at up by Menards and one median just before you turn into Menards up there on 30th. Also looking at up on Business Loop East, and I'm also looking at out on 3rd Avenue North, just north of town there, as an entrance type planting. And then we're going to put a sign in there, and it's going to have Dickinson Tree City USA for 26 years now. And the thing is so that hopefully we're looking at next year. We have a couple areas that we're going to be planting now. There's out by Pizza Hut, where we're going to be planting in a teardrop type of air planting. We put trees in there last year around the corner, and we're going to be putting in shrubs now around there and some flowers, so that we get some season-long coloration. We're putting in some shrubs, some sumac that will give you a good fall color. We're going to give botrytis, which give you summer-long bloom, yellow bloom, and then we want to use some of the big splash, like daylilies and some junipers, which are native to the western or the Badlands. And so the thing is we've got some that have a little more blue tint and some that have a little more green, dark green tint, so that we got show contrast and to attract it. And then again, I want associated with that a Tree City USA sign, and we've gotten some signs. And last year I bought several of them, so we're going to be putting those up, and with that, again, that 26 years in there. We've got another area where I want to plant an oak tree, some shrubs. It's more flowers. It's a triangular area. It's on Old Villard, I think, still Villard. And I go out there every day when I go out to Public Works, but the thing is and this roadway connects down to the major roadway going south of town. I'm not sure. What number is that, 80?
22?
22, maybe? Okay. And anyway, curves around. If you're familiar with it, it's just sitting there. There's irrigation in there. Somebody done some planting before, but it's just sitting there empty, and it's really looking unattractive. So what I want to do is put in some compost and some good soils. And the thing is I want to put in those shrubs and trees. We did that successfully in a triangle area in Jamestown, and there's no conflict as far as vision. And the thing is it's made it a very attractive little area. And it's just the other area that was just a grassed area. People had also tried to get a garden started there for years, but I got a volunteer group to sponsor it, the Sons of Norway, and they've been really active out there for about 10 years, as far as taking care of that little corner. And so I'd like to enhance those type of things as well for, excuse me. And the thing is I want to get those type of partnerships together as well. So when I look at our tree board again, I guess I look at it that it's a committee of working partners, but also I see a group of people underneath them, in subcommittees, volunteers, garden clubs, groups. Who knows? I got involved, the Sons of Norway and Germans from Russia and different things on different parks in Jamestown. And it was a point where they could actually put their sign out and recognize their group as well. So I guess that's, and in the future, of course, Dutch elm disease starts in June. And I'm getting 2 seasonal people. One guy's an older guy, but he's seasoned, and so he knows his way around Dickinson a little bit better than I do, as far as everything. He got us a new truck just because we were watching, and so he, or not a new one, but a used one that was going to be put out on bids, and we got that exchanged for another one. So the thing is I'm really hopeful the next few years. I guess I would like to see a couple more seasonal, maybe another full-time person on, because again, I'm 62 and I'm excited, but the thing is I don't know, how long I'm going to be here. I want to be able to train somebody in that can fulfill or step in my shoes and fulfill them, without much change.
Mr. Quam, excuse me. Sounds like you're doing a great job. You got some great ideas. I like the committee organization. I think you got passionate and knowledgeable people. Add more volunteers. I think it's a great idea. I'm a big proponent of having our own nursery and growing our own trees. Do you know if we have any land set aside that we can do that on?
We do.
Yeah. I'm just experimenting up at the water reclamation center there, and the thing is Greg talked with him, and we'd like to get more wind protection up there. Well, there's a way of putting in tree rows, putting in weed barrier that's going to ensure the maintenance, lower maintenance over a longer time period. And then also in between those tree rows, as those trees are filling in, we got the opportunity of putting smaller size trees in. And when they get to mature size, thinning them out and filling them in. I hate to see a wasted area, and especially when you're putting weed barrier down, which is, to me, is a tremendous thing. You can't hardly put a tree down in North Dakota and not save time as far as weeding and watering and things like that. And so the thing is by having tree rows like that, there, and then I've also been in contact with Craig Pearson, and he said, yep, he likes the idea, and he knows of the different areas. I look at the west side of DSU, and I've talked with Mick Resting, his name is on there. I haven't met him yet, but I've talked with him over the phone. And he said they've tried that in the past, and the thing is he says, again, I guess I look at it this way. We could buy lining out stock or bare root stock, different sizes, and start trees in there. Some that would be left there for maturity, and then the others would be transplanted. And I said, with the soil conservation, they're more than game to let us have everything that they have left over. They said, well, it's not always the most desirable. And I said, hey, we can always find a place for some of those things. If it's green and it fills the spot and beautifies it or leaves it better than what it was before, I think that's, I think we can use it.
And you're well on your way of separating this committee from the planning and zoning. Do we need a motion or something to approve this or
Well,
move forward with this?
Once again, I'm going to look at Mr. Gaw and Mr. Murtha. This board was officially designated as the Urban Forestry Board. Now, to change that, the process would be a recommendation by either Mr. Gaw or this board or however we want to do it, would have to go back to the city commission to either amend this board, create a new board, whatever. So, I mean, right now, we can't just say, and that's where, I let Vern know that we had this unofficial meeting of people that are interested in urban forestry. That was not a board. So, I'll let Mr. Goff maybe jump in.
Yeah, I actually have been looking at the code. The code just says that there shall be an urban forestry committee. It doesn't designate who sets it up or anything, so that's good. There's very little limitations. This is something we'll look at. As I've been sitting here thinking perhaps the right thing to do is to have this committee, the Urban Forestry Committee, that does the background, because as we recall, we have a lot of meetings that aren't televised. This one is televised, so perhaps the role is to have a report in the Planning and Zoning Commission from the Urban Forestry Committee, because Vern just said a lot of things here today that I haven't heard. So if I haven't heard them, I bet the citizens at home hadn't heard them. So if we have a committee that we hide even farther, they won't hear them. So I think if we had a really exciting report like what Vern just gave you in this commission, that might just be the role. But you're right, we will look at this a little bit to make sure from a legal standpoint and bring back, and perhaps maybe if this isn't going to be the committee, maybe to approve the makeup of the committee. That might be a good step too. But I think it is probably the right thing to do, but we need to keep it out there as well.
Anything else, anyone?
I guess the only thing I would add is that planning committee is a good connection for urban forestry, because I mean, again, I think some of the activities and stuff, if we can implement urban forestry into the development process or review of some of the processes, which has happened in in a lot of studies, I should say, not all of them, especially in North Dakota. But the thing is, but I think it's important, just to kind of look at that. I mean, even just, making sure they got a tree row or something on the north and west sides of larger developments. That would be a big start.
Mm-hmm.
That's for snow control and, of course, wind control and things like that.
I think I like the idea of maybe, at least a minimum once a quarter he reports, what they're doing, or It can be once a month if everybody thinks it's necessary, but, I mean, I think that's some stuff we can look at, but, I mean, at least once a quarter, I would say would be the minimum that he would just give us a report, that update of what he's doing, and so we'll leave that to Mr. God.
Yeah, we'll bring you back
Mr. Hadley to sort
a
out.
formal recommendation at the next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Quam. Anything else?
Nope, thank you much.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I want to thank you all for serving on the committee in the meantime. And the thing is because, I mean, you know, there's ways of supporting it, you know, or keeping it alive and things like that. And the thing is so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. All right, commissioners, we'll move on. Anything on the agenda that the commissioners would like to discuss or add? Item 5. Hearing none. Any public issues of city concern not on the agenda? So there's nobody here, so I think we can probably move past that one. And then item 7 would be a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.